This box inspired my opening chapter, and inside the notebook I've got an envelope for pieces that I want to add later. I have a whole lot of research here about the ruins in Ephesus and some of the people who live there. I made it possible by taping pieces of paper to leave spaces for adding information later. I also used pictures that I had printed out for note-taking. There's some tattoos by Scythians. I made lists and timelines and focused on particular gods and goddesses, and I included different tidbits I'd get from math and science, neurology. I also hid some material that if somebody looked into my suitcase at the airport, they wouldn't, right away see it. Some of this came from assignments by Gretchen Henderson, who had us make a shadow book for the work we were composing for her class. I would use glue, like a stick glue, or sometimes I use a spray glue and spray the back of the pieces that I'm going to put in there. I would include information about different topics on the same page sometimes, thinking if I got stuck I could try to piece those fragments together to see if I could come up with something new, and that helped me generate new work. I also wanted to know things that I would want to see when I made it back to Turkey to do some research. I included a lot of maps so that I could, and I packed this around. I left it actually in the museum, and some nice people found it for me. I added anything that inspired my curiosity. Sometimes I would start with ideas, and sometimes I would just push forward. My big goal was to put together something that would inspire chapters later on as I wrote the novel. I wish I had saved the images separately, but they were taking up a lot of space. But it's nice to make a little video of your shadow book so that if you ever lose it, you still have some of that content. You can slow it down or stop it, enlarge it, see what it is that you have written there. Sometimes I would add entire journaling pieces. Sometimes I would fill just a part of the page and then fill around it later. I tried to not make it too tidy because then it would lose the generative aspect. I wanted to remember this was to generate another book, not just to create a book in itself. When I showed this to Gretchen, she was a little concerned that I would try to dump in everything in the book, and actually the book ended up being far longer than I had anticipated. But some of this material I ended up not using. It's better to start with a lot of material and then cut back, just use it as you need it. I like to use good archival pens that I get from Michael's or from the university bookstore, and I like using kind of graph paper to help me with keeping text straight and also for placing images, but you don't need that. Anything that you can combine text and image with will be just fine. In fact, you don't need a notebook at all. You can make a shadow book using another book, which I'll demonstrate here in a bit. It's a Commonplace book that Karen Brennan had us make for her class. Another thing that's optional is the images. I made several notebooks full of just text. When I was beginning to write the chapters, I would include short pieces and then develop them later. I found Betsy in the Circus at Sam Weller's used bookstore and decided to make it my Commonplace book for Karen Brennan's class. I included images that I was drawing for an art class at the same time. I also took inspiration from the pages themselves. The creepy clown imagery really resonated with me because I was preparing to leave my husband at the time. So you see here small pieces that I was writing for other classes, for film class, for literature classes, and I just used whatever I felt fit, although it didn't seem together like a novel in itself, which is, I think, what Karen had in mind. I like to think of it more as a shadow book for another speculative novella that I had started writing and that I am continuing to write now. So think of these books, these Commonplace books, as something that can develop over time. You can pick it up for a while and let it go. You'll see in this one I was already starting to use things like pockets, like folded pages. I have an accordion page at some point in here, so you can also use it as a space to play with bookmaking ideas. I don't know if you keep all of your old notebooks and sketch pads, but it's a nice way to put some of those little tidbits to use, little pieces that you liked, or, small drawings that don't comprise a work in itself, but you can put it together with other material that you print out. You can also print off pages of old assignments or love letters or maps, lists of things that you find really useful. I've got a piece in the Codex in Spolia for using a Commonplace book when you're preparing to leave an abusive partner. And I've suggested a lot of materials like the ones that you see here, and suggested that they keep things like lists of their medicines, lists of how to lose a driver who's following you, lists of how to find housing and food when you have nothing, material that you don't want to lose that you can put in pockets, because you can prepare one of these Commonplace books and inside a book that nobody is ever going to open. Although I don't know, the cover of this book was pretty evocative. If I saw that, I would definitely open it. And I'm not suggesting to make a book for, escaping abuse. You can do with it what you want. For our purposes, the idea is to inspire another book and to give you a resource that you can use while you write that book.